could start now. It's like, there we go. So when I converted it, I'll cut this part out, but when I converted it, or when I entered the call, it converted it. So that's what I had to do. I was just making sure, because I was going to be really pissed if I recorded this entire thing and then this call ended and it was like, we can't unzip this file, so guess you're screwed.
Nope, that's good. That's like when you've written something and it disappears, or any other thing.
It's not fun. That's why I'm really big on like making sure I press the save button, because it hasn't been as bad like in recent years, but when I was younger, I would write stuff like a script or something and then forget, because like back in the day there wasn't like an auto save, or at least I don't remember there being an auto save for Word. So if like a computer crashed, or maybe this was just for my Word, it would just be gone and I'd be like, wow, I just wrote like a 10-page screenplay and now poof.
It's a sickening feeling.
No.
A loss of self. A loss of time.
Literally.
I had an entire chapter like that disappeared, and it was just my computer froze up, and it was like one of those one times where I didn't Command S or something like that, and it was gone, and I tried to restart and get it back, but I knew there was going to be pieces that potentially wouldn't reemerge based on redescribing it, because sometimes, like, even reading over work now, you'll find something that you completely forgot that you said, and you'll be like, wow, I'm glad that's in there, but I have no recollection of writing that. But so when something like that occurs and something disappears, you never know what's lost to the sands of time.
Yeah.
Fickle.
The struggles of being a writer. I want to talk a little bit about that, something you just said, like in your writing process, or I'll say your writing process, do you have those moments where you write something and then you go back and read it and it's like this like perfect, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like this perfect connection that you make between these two moments in the book, or just this perfect thing that happens, this perfect symbol that you didn't even realize was in the book. And then you're like, when did that happen? Because that's happened with
How did
not
I
even
do
just
that?
yeah, it's weird. And it's not even just like books, but even like in Tyrone the musical I wrote, there were things that I wrote that it wasn't until I like read it or like saw it on stage that I was like, wait a second, this and A and B, it's like all of these things connect. When did that happen?
Exactly. That's I have a huge theory on that. I've like based my life on that theory, as far as like subconscious and direction in life, more so than like a conscious recognition of what our mind is trying to tell us versus what our mind is doing. And there's some things like that I almost attribute it to like an actualization of faith or something like that, because like you do something now and it creates like a then from that, but it's something like completely unforeseen, and then when you do that and it comes back full circle, you're like, oh my gosh, like there was like a purpose for why I did that and I didn't even realize it. No, it's an eerie feeling sometimes, and sometimes it brings on emotion when you do realize it too. I know in the very last, it's not a chapter, it's part of the epilogue, but like I had an epiphany around a character in the epilogue of my book, and I've been working on it for so long, and all of a sudden I had like a realization of who that character was and what she represented, and like it like altered the way I was gonna write it or portray it. And the next thing you know, I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And it's like I didn't even see it coming, or it wasn't even like intended in the book or something like that. But then all of a sudden it's there. And you're like, how? like, like, did I do this, or did like some, what is the term? I'm probably not gonna pronounce it right. Dynamism, is that the word? I think it's the theory of forces beyond like like forces in the universe that govern versus actual like decisions and stuff like that, but it's like the theory of like forces guiding matter beyond like decisions or something like that. So it's like called like dynamism I think that's the word. But sometimes I feel like I'm being affected. Like,
I
not to stray
speaking
too far out there, but
but something is moving you. I in my personal experience, just as like a Christian and as a writer, I think those worlds kind of not kind of they do mesh sometimes. There are
yeah.
moments when I feel as if, God is using my gift because I'll look at, how people are moved by something, in my work or how people are inspired by it. There's this really, really beautiful scene. And I don't say that because sometimes I feel weird when I talk about my work that way, but I'm going to call it that. This is really because it's based on something that actually happened in my life.
Hmm.
Really beautiful scene between Max and his mother, not to spoil the book, where he sort of struggles with his faith in school because it's his Christian experience in college is very different than what he would get back home. And it's sort of a mirror to what I experienced when I went to CMU, and the churches didn't look like the churches that I went to. They didn't sound like the churches and I had this sort of this I don't know, sort of this really weird moment where I was like, I don't feel like I'm connecting with God here. And his mother, prays for him and reassures him like the same God that that's here at home, that was here with you as a kid, that same God is with you at that campus. And um every time I talk to people, that's their favorite scene from the book.
Hmm.
And I think that's for a reason, and not just because of this sort of connection that we see between this mother and this son in this really difficult moment in his life, but just this celebration of just faith. I think that we're all, you know, looking for someone greater to lead us. And in my own experience, that's been God for me. The God of uh of the Christian Bible. And it's I don't know. I really do feel like we're all being led in some way, whether good or bad or evil forces in some way. But
Oh, I'm not, and I don't mean evil. No,
oh
I
no,
want
and
you
not that you would ever like I'm
to.
saying that, like,
I
when it
mean, you can
comes
be
to
affected by evil forces, no doubt.
you
Like,
can. No.
I think their existence is there as much as good forces, and
Mm,
it's up to us to decide what to involve in our life
yeah.
and to what extent they represent like a grade of evil or a grade of good.
Hmm. No, I agree.
Mm.
I agree. And I think art is especially literature is such a strong force. And I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, just like when it comes to, I don't know what your experience is like, how, well, I think you might experience something similar, but like, I feel as if when I'm writing, whether it's a book or whatever it is, especially with plays, but books, because they're a little bit longer in a sense, like I'm creating a world. Like it doesn't feel as if I'm just writing something down. I feel as if I'm inviting the reader into this whole world that I've created. These are human beings that they're reading about. These are, I have this process called world building where I try to make the world of the book as realistic as possible, whether it's creating my own version of like McDonald's, or whether I'm describing my editor actually, my good friend Joey, he was, when I was working on HAZE, one of the big things that he told me in the editing process was, um, it's the little details that make the world of your book
Hmm. And
more
sometimes we
realistic.
imagine those and we forget to put them in, and then later you realize, oh, wait a minute, like I'm seeing this world exactly from like what I've put, or like if I'm depicting a scene, or if I'm depicting a scene that a character's in, or if an action they're taking, you'll see it plain as day, and you'll have specific references you'll make in order to describe it, or like ways of saying the detail by using like a simile or something like that. And then all of a sudden you'll read back through and you'll realize that you haven't put those things in there, and you're seeing it plain as day, but then you're like all of a sudden like, wait a minute, I've got to put those details that I see or I use to describe this scene, or they might not see it that exact way. But I do feel like that. I do feel like it's creating like a separate reality. And that's what I mentioned when we were not recording, is that like I was so consumed, like I was coming back from another reality. And there's
Mhm.
times even when I'm like driving home from work or something, or I've spent a long day writing. Let's say I spent 9 to 10 hours writing or something like that.
Mhm.
And when I'm driving on the highway, I'll envision myself going to one of the places in my book, and it'll feel as like real as anything else, or like if I was driving up to some place. And those are the points where like something really kind of like connects between like the metaphysical and the physical, when all
Mhm.
of a sudden you're like, okay, I can see the character, I can embody it. And then you get like some even more details because like you like become that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, I just kind of went on a tangent, but I hope it portrayed the thought or the idea.
Yeah, no, it did. I I'm really glad that you like sometimes I feel as if I'm like well, I used to feel like I was weird.
I am
I guess
weird.
we're all weird. I mean,
No, there's
let's
no
just be
getting
honest.
around it.
Like you
I'm
just
as
come into
weird as
this
they
world and you're
come.
weird. Yeah, no matter how cool somebody may seem to be, we're all a bunch of weirdos that are, that are just trying to, I don't know, create and feel and love and be loved. And I know I'm really glad that you sort of described, your experience of like, writing something and kind of going to the places that you've written in a
I
sense.
love it. That's part of the reason that I write, is because like you do experience that. It's almost like
Yeah.
taking a trip within yourself without having to go anywhere.
Yeah. It's one of the that happened with Haze for me a little bit, and a little bit with Wonder Boy, because I always believe that you have to write from your experiences, whether it's fictional or fantasy.
Mhm.
So they're all based on real places and in some ways real occurrences. But I think it was really, really real for me when I wrote Tyrone, my musical. Because the whole point of this show is based on this kid that struggles with maladaptive daydreaming, which is these very intricate daydreams that like just like take you to other worlds, like where you just kind of like disappear for a second.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the funny things about the show is that for a long time, I actually maladaptive. So I've dealt with maladaptive daydreaming my entire life, and
Mhm.
I MD'd, as we call it, to write the show, which is funny. I actually listened to like the music and envisioned what it would look like as I was writing it and as I was, staging it, directing it. And it's funny how that happens, that you know I don't know, just my experience meeting other writers that in a sense kind of do that, where they go to those places and it almost becomes I don't know, a place of comfort. Sometimes when I'm, going through a tough time, I'll pick up Haze and I'll just kind of like, I don't know, go to Winchester. Like, and it's I don't know, it's funny how sometimes your work becomes a home for you to kind of go to, a defense
Mhm.
mechanism sometimes too, against, I don't know, anxiety, depression, life.
Mhm.
um
But it's definitely an outlet. And when you say daydreaming like that, it's almost like something you don't realize you're doing before you write, and then the next thing you know, you realize it's almost like a gift of like creativity. And what you're actually doing is like your mind is like producing something, and it's your duty as a writer to capture that and then reinterpret it. Because
mhm.
you might think it's like, oh, I should be paying attention, I should be doing this, but it's actually exactly what you probably should be doing. And and then and that's what I call like visualization. And there are times where I've spent where I'm almost look like I'm in like a fugue state or something like that. And like anyone who's around me. Like I'll be on the porch or something, and let's say my father has observed me while I'm in the middle of one of these daydream type situations, and he's like, "What are you doing?" Like old men sit and stare at the grass. And I'm like, oh, just thinking, kind of thing. But it's all about visualization, and it's almost like you start to learn to use that anxiety, and you start to use those depictions, and you anticipate the moment of fruition. And a big part of writing is just anticipating actually writing it, and then all of a sudden the daydream will produce exactly what you want to see, and parts will negate themselves, and then you're like, there it is. And that's when you go, and the next day you hit the keys, so to speak, and then
Mm-hmm.
you depict it out. Because there, with that daydreaming process and stuff like that, there are like other ideas that occur around it, and you're like, and you can weigh those, like um options as far as the reality goes, until it like all aligns into the vision that you actually want. And then it's about capturing that vision, more so than even like how people think about writing, like, oh, it's words on a page. It's like, no, it's like it's
Mm-mm.
a visual scape, and you're trying to describe that visual scape that like lives in you.
Yeah.
And then once you actually do that, then you can come back and you can release that anxiety, and you can be like, okay, now I can settle back into reality. Like, whatever. I know it's safe and captured as long as the file doesn't erase, like
There you go.
we've talked about and stuff like that. But once you do have a good idea, and like that idea or daydream is there, you can redescribe it, like if you do lose the file. But like we
Mhm.
said, there are like details that come out in writing from that and stuff too, that may never reoccur. So you got to be quick.
Yeah.
You got to grab it.
Yeah. Inspiration, it doesn't wait. It's I was
Middle of the night. Sometimes
yeah,
you wake up from a dream and you're like, oh man,
this needs to be written down.
where's my calendar? Press the add app, speaking to my phone. Hope anyone
Hmm.
else who can hear me isn't thinking there's voices or tongues going on,
Yeah,
like
listen.
whispering into the phone.
You have to just let people think I don't know, you're crazy. Because sometimes like that's one of the coolest things is when something comes to you either from a dream or from the world, and it's like you've been waiting for that light bulb moment. It just happens. Like I was on my balcony, and I'm currently working on on a book right now, and there was a specific type of car or SUV that I was trying to describe, but I was googling and I couldn't figure it out. And I was just sitting there, and suddenly the exact SUV drove by, and I
Mhm.
like tried to write down like the name of the model and everything on my phone, but I was like, it's funny how little things like that happen just right when you need them.
It's crazy because it's like, then it's like all of a sudden you go back to a part in a book and you're like, hey, how could it have been without this? And it's from like a subtle
Mm.
moment. Like the other night, I was driving home just from the grocery store after going to grab some dinner, and the clouds were a certain way. And I'm like, there they are. Like, that's exactly how I want to describe them. And like, I wouldn't have the words to do so if I hadn't seen that exact moment. And
Yeah.
that's when the dynamism comes in.
Mm.
Because you're like, how? Like, it's like the world knew, or it was like personal for me or something like that.
Mm.
So,
It's a cool
yeah.
experience. Being a
Well,
writer is
yeah, it might be something that you're looking for too.
mm,
Like, so it could be a fruition. I do mention something about destiny in my book. I don't know if I could, I can't reference it directly without reading it or something, but it's something, is it says something about, is destiny an answer to something sought, or is it something predestined or pre-made? So,
mm,
you know, so you have to ask, are those moments like something inevitable, or are they an answer to a question sought, like an equation or something?
mm.
like did your mind subconsciously put you at that exact moment because for some reason it anticipated that might happen. I don't know. Unanswerable, but it happened.
It
So,
did. It
so
happens,
you know,
and it changes everything.
yep.
uh,
Anyways,
so
character process.
slowly
Watch
changing the
yourself.
stuff. It's like, and this is where Darius cuts the So yeah, let's dig into that a little bit. What does your like character development process look like? Is it
I'm glad you asked.
yes, is it what does that journey look like? I'm gonna readjust myself.
It's cool. Um, Honestly, it's new for me because a lot of my characters used to just be based on my friends, and this was before I ever wanted to write a book. And like when I was talking about when I was talking to you earlier about writing that book, that was kind of a joke. Everything was just based on like immediate acquaintances or friends and stuff like that.
Mm.
But um, I've been primarily a songwriter and a poet more than anything, and lots of works like that or pieces depict like direct instances in life, whether it's abstract or not. And it's not really character development as it is portraying an instance of life or time or something like that, because music is like a portion of time and a concentrated moment, an expression of feeling, I guess.
Mm.
And so it's basically just taking like real life and expressing it poetically and putting a melody to it. But as I entered into my book process, it actually became like representation, like people became representation of ideals. And it was about taking portions of like different studies and people I've met and just kind of like meshing them all together to like take these specific qualities that represented ideals more so than like specific people. So it was just kind of like a blending. And then once I kind of had like a character kind of figured out, it was like, okay, now how do I make this like a person from all these ideas and stuff like that? And what would they do? And then it was more or less me trying to like enter into their mental scape and think from a character's perspective rather than make it like a specific person that I knew. So that way they'd be kind of like organic, but like original in their own sense without necessarily identifying with anyone specific, because I wanted them to represent ideals and I wanted them to be influenced by people I've known, but I didn't want them to be those people. So
Mm.
it was more like deciding who they were going to be and then just making decisions for them and then portraying those decisions within the work based on the ideals I wanted them to represent. And that's kind of hard to do because that's all abstract thinking, because then you have to present like a scenario or a scene, and then you have to present their decision and why they would make that decision, but you have to make it um, look as if it was like a real decision without having it be like hokey or something like that. Like, okay, here's a scenario and here's what they do, but you have to make it real and authentic. And so it was basically thinking from their decision and then having them in a situation and then what would they do in that situation and then how does that affect their life later and stuff like that, because specifically for this book it takes over a large period of time. It takes over the course of 10 years, so you have to see like the aftermath of all these decisions that they've made previously and stuff like that. So it was a pretty big delve into like individual characters and then just like a big spectrum. So that's why it took so long. But it was fun too. Like
Yeah.
because then you get to like think outside of like yourself and like you're like, okay, I wouldn't necessarily make that decision or I wouldn't necessarily express myself that way or shout, but like maybe the character would. So you get to kind of like embody like an identity or something that would do something outside of your comfort zone, and then you kind of get to experience that in an abstract, transitive way. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's just like a personal delve into like a hypothetical character from a meshing.
There you go.
Cool.
I think that's like the best way to like write a character. And I think I have a bit of a similar process. It's interesting, like taking bits and pieces of people and even bits and pieces of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that it's funny, especially when it's so one of the weird things that I've sort of run into is I feel like I've somehow made all of my protagonists bits and pieces of me in a sense, which I didn't realize it until like I think Project It Guy, and I was like, oh, these are all me.
So you say that, but like we're also influenced by everyone we meet, and there are particular people in our lives, I think, that we all have that have influenced us quite a bit. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes those parts of us are also reflections of or interpretations from people who have influenced us. So I think
Yes.
it definitely expands. So even parts of us are from parts of other people too.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
No, definitely. It's funny how you sort of I don't think it was until I got older that I started realizing that there were bits and pieces of things that people would say, like different friends or even coworkers, that I started noticing that I would say and that I would do. And it's almost like you're taking some of the best pieces of different people and sort of clinging it onto yourself, and you become this really cool, unique person that's been inspired by all of these different, which is funny because that's really what art is in a sense,
Well, they also say that the 5 people closest to you help create your own identity and stuff like that, and it's a constant reflection too. So the character
Yeah.
kind of like is what we already do naturally as people.
Yeah.
Only we get to control them. Your fate is in my writing hands.
It's fun making humans. It's weird, but it's fun.
Yeah, it's
You just
cathartic too, and I think people
Yeah.
should do more creative things like that growing up, or like even when we're in literature class and we're learning about Beowulf and all sorts of stuff, and we're like, oh my gosh,
Mm.
like it's good, but like I think more creative things like that should definitely take place. And I think
Mhm.
creativity is like a basic function and form, and I think we suppress it and negate it a lot too. So
Yeah.
it's people like us that like delve into that and like rediscover that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. It's a
and that's
beautiful
why we
thing.
need to show that.
Can you imagine how much of a better world this would be if we allowed ourselves to let our
Discover
imaginations just
creativity.
huh?
Discover through creativity.
Yes. It's so important. People, I don't know what and maybe this is just me, but I don't know what I would have done if I didn't like take that imagination that I had as a kid. And I mean, now it's become my career, but I don't know what I would have done with that, because you have these ideas, and I don't know if you can like, I'm sure you agree with this, like this was a part of your experiences. I feel like there were whole worlds up there, and when you're a kid, people are just like, oh, he's playing pretend. But as I got older, that world of pretend, it never left. And that's, I think, the moment when they were like, oh no, like he's a writer, like there's a reason why this isn't weird, like this is what he's supposed to do.
Mhm.
um but I think I wish more people, it's sad. I wish that more people kept that love of their imagination as they, because I think, one, the world would be a better place. We wouldn't feel like we were such robots in some of these jobs. And I think that I don't know, people wouldn't be so sad. I see so many of my friends that are insanely talented people, whether it's writers or actors or singers, and I see them slowly start to like, I know we all grew up, but they start to lose that love of their craft. And
Well, there's the
it
idea based around success and the idea of success and whether it's like seen by a lot of people or not. And
mm,
like even that's been a big thing for me as far as being a creative is like, and it might be a selfish attitude and stuff like that too, but it's also a lot of my creativity is not necessarily for everyone as it is
mm,
just for myself. Like feel a certain way because I know like the actual response I get from it when I do something like that, whether it's personal or not. So I think people can sometimes associate attention for creativity and just living our lives creativity for our own enjoyment and or um self, what is it, self entertaining. You
mm,
know, like
yeah.
like keeping something personal but being like creative about it, you know. So I think people just maybe they get lost in it or something like that, and they have the wrong idea around like what it is and should be or how it should affect your life and how it expands, like
Mm,
based on how we end up interacting with people, you know.
yeah.
Like anything else. Like if you meet someone and they portray themselves negatively, you might take on that negative energy and then you deliver that to the next person and stuff like that, but change the context and it's just how you act, well not necessarily act but like live, or you know, and then like your mentality, and then that carries on. And I think creativity is an innate part of us that we suppress, and it might affect on a personal level more so than the attention we receive from what we would call fame or
Mm,
notoriety, you know.
no.
So personal personal experiences. Okay. We're gonna try and weed through that one and make it make sense.
Oh wait, that it's like, oh wow, this got dark. No.
Yeah, deep.
But honestly, those are the I think there's something valuable in allowing honestly conversations to go in that direction. So I embrace this.
Okay.
Because I think it's important not just for us, but for the people watching too. To um, art is a very interesting thing, and I think that art is way more than just what you write and what you sing, what you act, but that it is that life is art,
Yes.
and it can inspire you, it can elevate you, but it can also break you in some ways, depending on what you're doing.
Mhm.
I feel like we're all walking around playing a role. We're all walking around being characters in some way. Um, and it's interesting sort of observing that as a writer. So I feel like this is I don't know, one of the greatest professions, because you get to, I don't know, at least in my own experience, I've always felt like I've been an observer. Like I wasn't popular when I was a kid. And I write about a lot of people that aren't popular. So maybe that's, I don't know, there's something going on up there that's like, I need to write more about this. But um, I kind of just sat in the back. I was the wallflower. I just kind of sat in the back of the room and just watched everything. And what I noticed as I got older is that I have this weird thing where I pay attention to everything, people's mannerisms, the way that people blink, the way that people interact with each other. Even like as a kid, I would eavesdrop on conversations like people would have in the cafeteria at the mall. And I've started to notice little things that we do as human beings that are cool
That's
and
interesting.
weird. Yeah, we're very, very interesting
No, I'm
beings,
saying that you do that is interesting.
Oh, well, I don't eavesdrop as much anymore. But I definitely study people. Even in
Hmm.
my job now, I've started to notice little things that like people like I know what somebody's gonna say before they say it, because I've studied all of these customers, and I'm like, I know exactly what they're gonna say, and then they say it. And it's funny that, like, you know, as a writer, I've started to like, that's one of the big compliments that I got in my playwriting class in undergrad. Is one of the big things, if they hated the play, one of the things that they always said was, I can see myself having this, that this is scarily realistic. And I don't know, it's just interesting sort of coming at that's why I always say that my work is, I like to create worlds, and I feel like I like my art to be sort of a reflection of the world that's around me, to the point where you may read something in a book and say, this feels way too realistic, but it's fun. I love reading realistic, literature. I know if you like can speak to this, one of the things I hate is picking up a book and reading it and feeling like, not that they phoned it in, but it just feels like I want to feel as if, like, I don't know, I want to really connect to the dialogue. And you know what? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about dialogue.
Okay.
What does your process look like when it comes to like
Oh,
writing dialogue?
Well, again, I'm newer to dialogue. I mean, it took me 3 years to write this specific book, and a lot of my previous dialogue, where I say I wrote a musical, but mostly I've just wrote the musical, so the dialogue relates to the melody. So I focused on that. Dialogue. It's very momentarily, and I find myself speaking out loud in coffee shops, and people around me going, okay, this guy's either very comfortable with himself or there's something going on. But I guess it just becomes like a conversation with yourself. And again, you have to embody that other person who's in the conversation. And lots of times, specifically with the dialogue in this, I've gone over it a few times, and I've just tried to make it feel as natural as possible. But again, it's like looking from that character's eyes, and then like presenting the hypothetical situation that they're in, and then just really, what would I say, or what would they say, as me saying it for them, and just having a conversation with yourself almost. And the other thing I've done for dialogue is I've taken a lot of conversations that I've had in life, and then I've reinterpreted them, maybe changed some of the subtle details. But sometimes it's just taking conversation I've had and then reinterpreting it directly from life. So some of it's spontaneous based on what I think they'd say, and then a lot of it is, the reason it feels real is because it's real. It's just an abstract transitive application, like through another person's eyes with some tweaking. So, and then like building the story in that direction so it's applicable, around the dialogue, because you don't want to have the exact situation and stuff like that, but you want something that presents itself, and that's where you take from life. And some dialogue is directly from life, just with some tweaking.
Yeah, I think that's where it's some of the best dialogue, some of the best scenes, and I think a book comes from people's real life experiences. Like I said earlier, you have to write from what write from what you've experienced. And
that's where you have to be careful too.
You do, because sometimes
you want to be respectful, because some of like the more interesting dialogue that like we remember in life that really does inspire us is intimate in nature. So you want to be respectful around like how you present it and where it's coming from, because if it's anyone that you've known or like will know of it, it's something that they will probably remember too. So it's portraying it in the best way you can, as far as like being respectful of the situation too. And making sure that it's like covered and addressed and responsible.
Like, just so you know, this is gonna be in this book, so please don't fight me. That's
Like,
honestly why I'm really quiet about most
and
characters.
and the reason it's there is because you think it's important. It's not because you
Yeah,
want to portray someone a certain way, and like you don't put someone directly in the book. It's because it's something that you feel is important and needs to be there. It wouldn't be
yeah.
there if it didn't need to be.
Hmm.
So, it's just about being responsible and taking the things that you find are important and finding a way to present them
Yeah,
through
and
the
something.
ideals represented in the character.
Yeah.
Hmm.
The key word there is character, just so people don't get too.
Hmm.
I've read many stories of not even just with books, but with even plays where lawsuits have come from like past marriages where like it's like this show sounds similar to our marriage. I'm not going to say anything by name, but any musical theater geek that's watching this, you know what show I'm talking about. Um, you know
What?
exactly what I'm talking about.
I don't.
I'll tell you after this video is over because I don't want to get sued and I might run into this person in New York at some point. So I'm not trying to fumble a bag. But there's a
Well, I that's the other thing is like free press and stuff like that. And like you can quote anything that anyone says and you can film anyone on the street. So I mean, as long as you're not like taking the exact ideas, if they have like an idea of intellectual property in their conversation, but if someone
Mhm.
says something like and you could print it in a newspaper, I don't know why you couldn't print it in a book. But
There
I
you
might need
go.
to do more research on that, but
Be careful.
yeah.
Definitely kind of like call a lawyer or like find a friend that's a lawyer just to kind of run that by them real quick.
Mhm.
Um, but no, I mean I've taken like
Well, if
the
someone's giving
mother.
you permission too, like I've asked,
Yeah.
and whether they remember it or not is important too. Like whether
Mhm.
they said like, yeah, go ahead. Like,
It's like, yes, do this. Like,
we put this in writing.
and he's like, can you just sign right here next to the X?
Yeah.
Um, but I think
No,
that's cool.
no one in my book, as far as like the character and like some of like the dialogue and conversation that I've had in life is
Mhm.
completely on the opposite spectrum of like what who a character is in the book. So
Mm.
it's like almost like a completely different person who would be saying something of similar nature too. So I've tried to guise any direct references, but at the same time, like, you know,
You have to write what you know, like if it's good, if the text, if the dialogue is good, I think people won't be mad. I when I was a kid, I used to say, I actually had a notes app folder. Well, maybe not folder, but like at least like I kept a bunch of notes apps of like stupid, goofy things my friends said in high school. And I was like, this is gonna come in handy. And I would tell them, I'm taking note of this. They're like, we know, it's fine.
mhm.
Maybe the exact, quote didn't come out in the book, but I definitely used it because, I mean, and it's not even just things that were said that were unique to that person, but just stupid things that we said as kids that, especially with me writing young adult literature, I'm really thankful for those notes and for those moments because coming back to that, and maybe you can speak to that a little bit to your experience of like, because I know you don't write young adult literature, but
Not yet.
you should try it. It's fun. I mean, I think my dance is between adult and young adult literature.
Mhm.
But I've read a lot of, and I still do read a lot of young adult novels.
Mhm.
So that's sort of I guess the road that I found myself going down. Subconsciously, I feel like maybe it's because um, I don't know, maybe I wanted my teenage years to be a little bit different. So maybe I'm writing the perfect teenage story for myself. Um,
Mhm.
but let's sort of talk about that, like what your experience has been like writing, I guess writing, would you just say like adult literature? What would you call like your,
Oof.
does
If I
that
call
sound
it, no, I didn't
you're
say.
like no.
No, it's definitely adult. There's no doubt. And I've had ideas for young adult type literature. That first book I referenced that was kind of like a joke, and that's by no means like saying anything bad about young adult literature other than it was what I wrote was just like take it down all notches. Like, no one's ever gonna read this.
Hey.
But yeah, no, this is definitely adult. It takes on a lot of what is considered adult themes. And I mean,
Mm,
that's always ironic in its own right because adult themes affect children or young adults every single day. The decisions that adults make affect children every day. And
mhm,
with the more social media capability and posts that go on, what we consider to be in the adult world affects children. So yes, it is adult, but I mean, and I say it's 18 and up. Like that's what I
mhm,
posted it as. So but to say it doesn't affect, or to say that like themes that are addressed in the book don't affect children in real time, like there are there aren't children necessarily in the book, but there are children referenced, and it references how it's like an adult theme might affect a child. So it's definitely, and it's not so much adult in the context that the the work is like, how would we put it, like not skeevy, like, or like um I don't want to say let's see here, um physically R-rated. Like
Oh, okay. Oh, I know what you're. I
yeah,
would love to
it's
say that. I know
adult,
what. Yeah, I know what you're
it's
saying. I feel
adult
weird saying.
and yeah, it's mature in the sense like of the intellect behind like the conversation and stuff taking place and the things that it addresses. Like
Mm,
it's a psychological novel and it addresses a lot of like psychiatric elements and stuff that you wouldn't necessarily um think about as a child as much. And
mm,
so I think it's adult just in like the context of like what it is and what it's about. Like more so
mhm.
than like thematic elements of like character interaction at like a presentation of nude intimacy. Like
What? It's funny you say that though, because I feel like young adult literature is evolving. Um, in a way, I feel like it's starting to. That's why it's at a point where when I read young adult novels that are labeled as young adult, I'm like,
well, yeah, no, like the book Speak,
nah.
when I was in high school, I read a lot of books in high school. You
Mhm,
know, you read a lot of things as a young adult that aren't considered young adult fiction necessarily, like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Specifically, I mean, I reference Speak because there's like a pretty intense scene at the end of that. Do you know the book? It was
I've heard
made
of it, but
into a movie with, what's her name? The actress from Twilight before she was in Twilight.
Kristen Stewart.
Kristen, is it Stewart?
Stewart, I think so. Yeah, it's Kristen
Sorry.
Stewart. Yeah.
Speaking of young adult novels, like I actually didn't read Twilight. I'm sorry, world.
It's fine.
Shouldn't have
I
said
bought
that.
it, read the first chapter, and I was like,
Oh
I'm
no, we
good.
can't not. We'll lose so many fan bases if we say something bad
If
about
you're
it.
reading Twilight, I'm sorry. I was a Hunger Games kid. I couldn't get
I
into
read,
Twilight. So
yeah, I read. Well, there you go. Hunger Games, is that considered young adult? Because I mean,
yes,
the characters are young adult, very adult situation.
very. I'm
Like
surprised that
having
like when you go on there, like I think the youngest age is
self-sacrifice.
literally. It's funny
Hmm.
when you go on Amazon, it tells you what the age limit, not age limit, but like the preferred age. And I think it was like 11 or something. And I was like, what 11-year-old is reading
Really?
this?
Yes. Well, I mean, when I was 11, I read The Hobbit, and I can't recall
Oh.
everything going on there, but there's battles and there's young adult literature about the Civil War. I think it's, and there's the famous book No Man's Land, and I think that's the World War one potentially. But I mean, I
Mm,
read a young adult book about the Civil War about a young woman who embodies a soldier because she wants to fight alongside her brother. And there was a
mm,
lot of stuff going on there that was very real and very real for the young adults of that era to take place, like 14 and 15-year-olds walking into battle getting shredded. Like, I don't mean to be overly graphic, but like that's something I remember reading in elementary school. And that was
Hmm.
something that I specifically remember fifth grade, because I took the book to my fifth grade teacher because she used to read to us before going out to recess. And
Mhm.
I used to read all these books on my own just as a kid. That's what I did. And I was
Okay.
like, hey, I have a
Sense.
book that I read that I think we should read before recess. And I remember being in fifth grade and she got to the part where the young woman starts, like, it's revealed she's a young woman dressed as like a male soldier. And she's like, we're going to skip this. And then we got to the battle scene and she's like, we're going to skip this. And so, again, thematic elements that we're introduced to as a child that are very adult, because that's what children experienced in the time that it was.
No,
So, you know, you can say young adult, but we're all human.
it's we
And
are.
we have X amount of time until reincarnation. So we all
So
have to
there's
deal with certain things in a certain amount of time.
we do.
So
It's real.
anyways,
It's so real.
the
But I think that's yeah.
yeah, the only thing is like certain dialogue and stuff like that. There's probably ideas and concepts that wouldn't necessarily, as a kid, I wouldn't pick up on, as far as like certain words like mellifluous. That's a fancy word way of saying like, what is that? Like a fluid state. If you asked
Ah,
me that at 18, no.
you asked me that now. I'm like, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
The more you know.
Well, what's the word you used for the daydream? Melodramatic.
Maladaptive daydreaming.
Maladaptive, exactly. That's something I should know about based on what I just wrote. But like, I was like, yeah, of course.
Mhm, yes, I know it's. I've studied that for many years. No, it's like because you pick up things over time, as you get older, and um, I think it's that's all a part of this just this crazy, life of being a writer is that you find something and it's like either you discover something about yourself in it or it's like this works in this book. I don't know what this is. Let me research this. Like I was and this is another fun thing maybe to kind of I don't know, talk about like do you ever feel overwhelmed by the amount of ideas you have going on up there? So you're just like, I can't write 10 novels in a year. So these are going to have to get put in the middle file cabinet.
Yeah, there's a priority of importance
Mm,
based on what you feel is more important. But there's also catch 22 to that. And that when you enter the work that you feel is important, when it's done, you're like, well,
mm,
well, here's my next thing I'm going to do, but I don't feel as attached to it. So it's
mm,
like a distancing, and like you want to feel like you're working on that stuff that you really want to work on. But when you get to the next thing that you didn't necessarily prioritize, you're like, oh. But then at the same time, when you actually start delving into the material and like experiencing it, you're like, well, I'm going to put the same mentality into this and see if I can discover as much with this as I did the other thing. And then you try and treat it to be as just as important. And then maybe it becomes that way. But yeah, there's definitely, I have a lot of ideas too. And some ideas I can end up combining because I don't feel I'll have necessarily the time frame, and I'll be like, well, that's an idea that might not necessarily be an entire book itself, but how can I incorporate it into what I'm doing? And that's when
mhm,
I go Kurt Vonnegut on the situation, and I go on a little chapter tangent and I introduce an idea. And that's something I did with this, is because I had like this certain idea or ideology. And I don't want to give it away because I think it's a creative point or creative part of the book, but it ends up being like a TV show, in one of the characters watching a TV show, and then it explains the TV show. So that way I can take like an idea that I think is good and then kind of like find a way to incorporate it into the entirety of this piece without having to wait and try and make it its own thing when it might not be its own thing. But
mm.
still, like a good idea that way. So I'll
Yeah.
try and combine things too, as far as like ideas I have.
Hmm. Do you ever feel like your work is connected in some way? I started doing this really weird, almost
It's like
Disney thing.
Stephen King's universe
Hmm.
where he's got like all the ideas. Yep. I love
It's
the idea.
fun. I started like at first I noticed like that I don't know that like I think it happened early on when I was like, I kind of want there to be a Darius literary universe. Maybe people pick it, really pay a close attention to it if you're reading something about, but like you notice that there's little things that are connected, characters that pop in and out,
Disney
people that are
does that,
related. They
don't they?
do.
Exactly.
And
And
that's
that
really cool.
that's almost like the Beatles style marketing, or like Pink Floyd, um, whatever that was, Dark Side of the Moon, where like if you put it to um what is that movie, or oh my gosh, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, what am the Wizard of Oz. If you put their album on top of it, it becomes like little subtle things that almost become like unintentional marketing, because then that's when you get like a fan base that like looks for those certain things and like looks for the connections.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
that's
that's when
fun.
people start going, that's ingenious.
Like who would have ever thought? Listen, we're giving away
Woody's.
good ideas.
What is it? Woody from Toy Story. Saying, the Monsters Inc. bedroom.
Oh my god. I think there's a moment in is it Frozen? I think it's Frozen where during I don't know if it's the coronation or if it's during a wedding, but you notice that as the guests are coming in, Flynn and Rapunzel are like in the group. It's very quick. Like if you don't pay attention, they'll fly by. But like it's funny, just everything is like connected, which I think is really cool and probably takes quite a bit of planning from like the animators on different teams. Like it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
alrighty, y'all, make sure that like you put this character in this one. We're out until the next one.
But it's also like what we talked about earlier, where you create something now and then all of a sudden it connects there and then you realize it. And
Mm,
then like then those opportunities kind of start presenting themselves too, more so. And then you're like, oh, wait a minute. like it's like a subconscious thing. It's like your
yeah,
mind almost does it for you. And what you
yeah,
have to focus on is creating what is now. And then the next thing you know, it's like life. Somehow it connects.
yeah.
You don't argue with it, you just accept it and try to pick the cool parts. Yeah, to
Make
show.
something good out of them.
Hmm.
Now, writing is cool. Writing is really cool.
So how long are we, how far are we into the video?
I think we're just about an hour now. So this is, I think, a good place to
Read an excerpt from both
sure,
our
that's actually
books.
a really great idea.
Let's see here. I've already read the first page on my own. What part do you want to hear about?
I don't know. Your book is very big, so I'm sure there are many like. What do you think is best? Choose
That's
your
something
favorite
strange
scene.
too. I want your opinion on that based on you see something on Amazon and it says this book is 640 pages, but do you also think that has to do with the writing, font size and stuff like that? Because mine's 360
Mm,
on there and I was like, that's a pretty decent amount of pages. Like pat
hmm.
myself on the back. And then I look at like someone else's science fiction novel and there's 670. And then I look at Harry Potter and there's like 300 whatever. And I really want to know if that's based on font size.
That's a part of it. How you like format your manuscript definitely it plays a part in how many pages is in it for sure. So
Cool. Like, because I
yes,
thought I was doing good
you are doing good.
based on the words, like word to page ratio. But then I saw some pages and I was like, oh man, I gotta get back on this.
I think just write the sequel. There you go. Make it a
Um,
trilogy.
I'm gonna read my favorite line. I read this to my brother earlier too. Just specifically, it's one line.
Okay.
I just think it's it's telling of the two personalities, and it's just like, or that are involved. I'm not going to necessarily explain the two personalities, but I want to read this line.
Okay.
Excuse me. Garneth sat down in the center of the room for about an hour. Avius sat patiently as well from his safe point of unknown observation. He had prepared to have snacks if the process took a while. Watching the screen showing the lunatic intently, he chewed methodically on light vegetable puffs. That's it. Like, wait, what?
I feel like I was like, okay. And then my brain was like, wait a second. Huh? Like the ending kind of threw me off a bit, but that's what a good line should do.
It's weird because it's like the dynamic of the situation would not call for snacks, but the character Avius is used to it or used to what he's doing. So there's like a ironic comfortability with his nature around like what it is he's actually doing. So I need to write something that like, or not write something, read something that is like captivating, so to speak.
That's captivating. I mean, it definitely captured my attention. So
Might want. I don't want to read a full chapter. I know what I'll read. This is one of my favorite. This is just like, see what I've tried to do here with like any heaviness in the content or like what it's about. I try to pace it with like chapters that kind of bring like, or let the reader relax a little bit. Like there's some things that depict like different ideas like architecture, and it almost becomes like informative in that way. And then some of the chapters are just more or less like scenarios to let the reader kind of relax on what's taking place too.
Mm.
See here. This is a chapter. It's one of the more recent chapters because I think it like sometimes when I read back through, all of a sudden I'll like have a scene just kind of like appear to me, and I'm like, yeah, it definitely needs a transition there or something. So this is one of the more recent chapters that kind of appeared to me a couple months ago when I thought I was done with it, and I was like, and then all of a sudden I was like, nope, it needs something that like segues into the next part. This is called Good Morning Avius. Are we ready?
Yes.
Can we just go for it?
Yeah.
This is what we've decided to do, so we will do it now.
Okay. Dive right in.
Good morning, Avius. After Hospital 401 opened, there were approximately 20 full-time employees, more non-specific to the rehabilitation aspect. Even with the limited staff, there were still levels of clearance on specific information and areas. Some of these employees were educators and fellow counselors that were ultimately instructed by Avius for his reasons, most of the time not knowing why they did what they were asked to do. A level of involvement with an agreement to comply was made evident in advance before being hired. Their duties were considered operationally similar to the AI functions of an unquestioned Vaisha. Vaisha is an AI presence that should be known.
Okay.
That's explained earlier. Okay.
I like that.
Unknown to them, there was a subtest of credibility between organic staff members and Vaisha. Tommy and Avius thought it would only improve their findings in the hospital's work and gauge the AI's abilities and consistency. Others were tech specialists / designers and engineers who worked with Tommy previously for his projects less consistent with the hospital's overall objective and assistance that kept him organized. The government required security guards for the patients. They also thought it best to have other doctors on staff specializing in other practices in case of emergency, or if someone, especially one of the patients, got sick or hurt without moving them to another hospital. I'm going to pause because in doing this and learning from the process of us doing this, I feel like a little background about the book might help with the context of reading. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I get what you're saying.
Okay. So my book is called Ethereal. It takes place at a future depicted hospital that is doing specialized or secret tests on incarcerated individuals that are seen as patients, as cause and effect. And basically what it's doing is addressing them um, in a sedate in a for, to be used in a hypothetical sedated process to use dreams to replace memories, or not necessarily replace them, but affect memories. So the people who created the hospital want to use an AI presence in order to remain completely consistent with all information that they receive from every single procedure and following, and that way they can record the procedures and stuff like that. So there's like nothing outside of their control as far as like the consistency of like doing these procedures. And it should be mentioned, and it is mentioned in the book, that within like our cells, there's been a discovery of something called time cells. And time cells basically create instincts by uh, creating vivid memories from moments of like traumatic events in our lives. And so basically when we see patterns or anything that causes us to recognize these events subconsciously, we can like induce hormones from our brains and stuff like that as a result of like these memories that are implanted in our cells. So basically the sedated objective is to recalibrate these memories based on finding a path to them and then re-experiencing a dream in relation to them and drawing it from relativity in the memory. And they're doing these tests on convicts. So anyways, then a bunch of stuff ensues as a result of the process.
As it would.
So anyways, I'm going to skip ahead here.
Okay.
And since Invasia is the name of the AI presence at the hospital. So she's basically responding to everything. She's the nurses, she's the recording equipment, she's the computer operating system. There's like specific appendages, she's the security system. So everything is just like controlled and reported to Avius, who is the head psychologist. And Invasia was designed by Tommy, who is his partner, who is funding the entire operation. But the government is involved because the only patients that they're allowed to do the tests on are convicts. So anyways, this is Good Morning Avius. So this is like the inauguration of the hospital.
Okay.
But it's supposed to be lighthearted. Anyways, hence why it's kind of, I consider it adult. So
what, you know,
a smooth black ribbon hung in front of the sliding black glass doors, waving slightly in the breeze. The small staff posed at the front entrance to the hospital, to Hospital 401, facing a high-def camera lens on a hovering AI drone. Behind them stood a slightly larger group of AI nursing staff. They were at the inauguration of the hospital. Tommy had gathered everyone for a brief less is more speech about teamwork and helping the world that seemed hardly prepared after what Avius thought was an unnecessary DJ-like performance of his partner playing electric music from a table set up with speakers. Dressed for the part, Tommy wore a black collarless blazer with matching pants and a low-cut gray tank top with open-toed shoes and multiple long thin leather necklaces, including what appeared to be a gator tooth on one of them, and had let his hair grow to his shoulders in the time Hospital 401 was being built. The trying musician attempted to motivate using the help of preset tracks, as the new staff had stood listening, slightly befuddled, holding healthy vitamin-infused energy drinks Tommy had distributed as a warming gesture before handing off the attention to Avius, who tried to reconcile the professional tone of their work without offending the incorrigible encourager. I'd like to thank everyone who has been involved in the process of creating Hospital 401 up until this point. For many of you, it's been a lot of special training, including myself. I know there's a lot of secure information around who we are, who's involved, and what we will try to do here. But I want you to know that every one of you will play a vital role in accomplishing our mission. I would like to now officially introduce everyone to our other staff. Vaisha. Vaisha, will you please step forward? Everyone, this is Vaisha. She is the present artificial intelligence at the hospital. For many of you wondering why we have such a limited staff and select personnel, she is the reason. Vaisha will accommodate many of the positions here at the hospital or at Hospital 401, and you will be filled in accordingly as to how she affects your positions very soon. Vaisha, do you have anything else you'd like to say? Yes, I do, but I'm gonna stop. Feel like I should have prepared more as far as reading goes to be more engaging.
Hey, I'm what chapter is this?
This is called Good Morning Avius.
Morning Avius.
But also some of the characters like Tommy are introduced, so some of the eccentric traits that are being like reiterated with him playing the DJ would be more in context with other parts of the book before that. So
okay,
like I said, some of the chapters become kind of informative and descriptive, specifically kind of like detailing ideas behind like the AI and the architecture and stuff like that. And then the storyline ensues within that. So your turn.
no, I'm engaged. I'm excited to read it. I haven't picked it up yet just because I'm writing a lot right now. But I have to I think you speaking about it definitely like makes me even more excited. Because I think anytime someone writes about AI, Dan Brown, his most recent book, Origin, not to give too much away, sort of touches on AI, and I don't know what direction your book goes in, but I'd like to see if it goes in a similar direction.
Mine's not fully based around the AI as the main character. It's more like an ideology of someone non-judgmental, because in my book, it also discusses what AI is as far as from like a legality standpoint. And I say like I talk about like laws and governances on AI, because the theory that AI might be able to occupy other computers or like infiltrate other computers. There's governances on the AI in my book that are implemented by the government, and she has to check out before she can actually be uploaded to the specific software. So for me, the AI kind of represents like a symbolic person who doesn't judge anyone, but is more or less just completely duty based, or like compliant and stuff like that. And I thought that was interesting, just because, I mean, with any person, you can get any side like or opinion or judgment and stuff like that. But when you have some like something like an AI with a governance on, that's just, nope, I do what I do when I'm told to do what I do it. You can kind of play that off of any character who's having any moral conflict with anything that they're being asked to do. So it's more like it is there, and it does talk about AI and like theories and stuff, like I said, with like having to have certain governances, and like how far like does that restrict like an AI from actually being considered a person and whatnot. So yep.
There's a lot of meat there.
I wouldn't say it's not necessarily about AI specifically, as it is more or less like the moral fiber of man and how AI and how we reflect off, and how AI might like help interpret that.
Okay.
So
okay. Yes, I will definitely be. I'm intrigued. I think that like
hopefully not repelled.
huh?
Hopefully not repelled.
Well, not at all. I think the way you've described it, this entire process, not even just this conversation, but just like even before this, I've been really excited about it. So I'm pumped to dig in for sure. Yeah, you're a good writer.
Any feedback, honesty is appreciated, because remember, this is my first go at like a book like this. So I've already been giving copies to my brother, and I say, I'm just like, read it, help me.
It's like, get me, like, does this make sense? Honestly, that's so important. Just like let it, family and friends, like, if this sucks, please tell me so I don't embarrass myself in front of people, in front of the world. I don't want that.
Yeah. Oh, I don't mind having one aspect or something like that. I've tried my hand at a lot of creativity, and I was talking to my friend Michael about this too, and he's like, look, even if like there's some things that people don't agree with, or maybe it's not the best written thing in the world, it's the ideas that count, man. At
Yeah,
least you're putting like your ideas out there, and like people can see it.
you got to start somewhere, you
Yeah,
know. I think you're starting pretty big. I mean, that's a very big novel, so I think you're starting in a really good place for sure.
I
It's like, it's
appreciate
very epic. It's a very epic start.
it. Well, again, I've been writing poetry my whole life, and I started taking it seriously when I was 19 or so, and then I really started writing a lot of music when I was 22. And I did like a really like intense um kind of like delve into some really I'm gonna say really one more time into word configuration as far as
Okay.
like the poetry and like what it was about, and just trying to use specific words, and becoming more like a wordsmith. And I think it helped my book for sure, as far as like bringing like a creativity to the writing. But I have a like, if you compiled all of my poetry and stuff like that, it would definitely probably equal a book. It just isn't organized in that way. So it is definitely something new for me, but I've spent a lot of time with words, like on a screen and handwritten. I have tons of pages and stuff like that. So I do have those light silhouettes that when you look at a light and you look away, I do have some permanent, like, some effect from staring into the screen, like meticulously like putting together one line amidst like an ocean of rhyming words. So,
Hey, maybe there's a musical in there somewhere.
or a rap opera.
Listen, Hamilton needs some competition, so
uh,
do it.
Anyways, your turn.
Oh my. I'm still
I
fiddling to
don't,
find.
well, it doesn't necessarily have to be your book or anything, but you have to read something.
Do I want to read something from HAZE or from Wonder Boy? I feel like HAZE has gotten so much attention.
Wonder Boy is
Um,
cool. I mean,
huh?
Hayes sounds like dramatic and stuff like that for sure. And I love a good drama. But you said something about Wonder Boy and him being in his room and using like the stars and stuff like that.
Yes.
Very intriguing.
I can read something from Wonder Boy. I have to well, it's on the I can use the Kindle app. Um so Wonder Boy is the first thing that I ever published. Um it was my attempt at, I was like, I'm gonna try to write something. It's not a book, but it's so funny story. Wonder Boy was originally a screenplay.
Okay.
Um and we attempted to shoot it twice, and it just never worked out. The first time, um, I'm going to be very careful with what I say in this video. I would just say it didn't work out. Us as a team, the timing just didn't work out. Tried to do it a second time. The casting really didn't work out. Like, I'm no shade, but yeah. Um, so it sat on the shelf for a minute, and then I said to myself, what if I just this isn't working. What if I just turn this into like a short story, like a mini book? And I did it, and it finally like it had life, and I was like, okay, this is what it was supposed to be. It will be a movie at some point, but I think it started in a good place. I don't, because this doesn't have chapters, so I want to, let's see where I
How long is it totally or total?
like 7,000 words.
Okay.
So it's pretty small.
Okay. So I could probably read it like within a day if I bought it
Oh, definitely.
tonight, which I'm
Yes,
going to.
short. Maybe I'll start from trying to think what's okay, I'll start from it. Okay. So to give some context, because maybe people won't need that. So Wonder Boy is about this guy named Sam. He's a grad student, a broadcasting grad student, but he loves stars. So why he's in this broadcasting program, the world may never know. But he is obsessed with stars and the idea of a Stargate. And he spent most of his young adult life trying to find a Stargate. And
What's a
he
Stargate? What's a Stargate?
So Stargate is sort of like this portal into like another dimension.
Okay. I kind of assumed it was something like that, but I wasn't sure the specific term.
It doesn't exist that I know of, but then again, you never know. We don't know what's that area.
Is it something that you made for the book?
Not necessarily. Stargates have been around for a while. There's actually a TV show called Stargate that was based on Stargate, back in the old days of sci-fi, or the Sci-Fi Channel. I mean, it's fine. Not at Stargates are like one of those.
I've definitely heard. I've heard of the TV show.
Yeah. So it's like that's kind of like that's what it's just a portal to somewhere else, basically.
Okay.
Like a black hole, if you will. I don't know. I don't even know if that's how black holes work. I'm writing about science. I don't even know what the heck I'm talking about.
I'm
so basically
saying my genre is science fiction, and I don't know prominent science fiction.
It's sad. I just write. I'll be honest.
Sometimes as writers, we have to restrict ourselves. Like Lil Wayne said in an interview, they're like, "What are you listening to that's new?" And he's like, "Myself," because
My
I need
own
to
music.
focus on what I'm making.
Like I can't distract myself with other stuff.
Sometimes in process, that's just how it is.
No. Your own little world.
And plus, like we said with dialogue, like you might want to be associated with certain like literature, like shows and stuff, but at the same time, you don't want to be seen as like imitation or plagiarism. So you don't necessarily read those things, so they don't show up in your work subconsciously.
Yeah, because that'll happen.
Be
super careful with that.
Anyways.
So yeah, Sam, he downloads this star, what would you call it? Like not star chasing necessarily, but like basically like this app that alerts you when there's different stars or constellations that you can see in your area. And he finds out that the brightest star in the sky, Sirius, is going to be visible from his apartment in Detroit. So he obsesses the whole day over preparing to try to get a shot of Sirius because he's into astro photography. And I'm basically giving away this entire first scene, but the whole point of the story is that
it's okay.
He's chasing after this star that somehow becomes his friend, but ends up connecting him with this random guy in his apartment. And they end up chasing after the star to find this Stargate in the city of Detroit. So it's this really interesting story about this sort of young, anxiety-filled, hermit, this grad student that in some way, shape, or another gets pulled out of that, and it sort of is as if the star of the universe is like I don't know, trying
like a guiding force or something like that.
Yeah, sort of pulled him out of that hole, and not only introducing him to this intergalactic, phenomenon, but also he gains a friend along the way, and not just the star, but an actual friend, which is something that he's been craving for a long time. So it's this really cool story about stepping outside of your comfort zone and I don't know, finding yourself in the mystery of the universe. And so I'm just going to read this because I'm rambling.
Also, it almost sounds like, it doesn't sound like it, but it sounds like it could like segue into something similar to like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but go a complete different direction as far as like finding something like that, or almost like a Narnian thing, but like in a cool sci-fi futuristic way, which I think is pretty sweet. So,
thank you.
no problem.
I tried. We'll see what you think as you read it.
Put more to it.
Like I'm just like, I'm just gonna go into KDP and just like start editing. Like I need to change this. So it's like he's compared me to some really big, some heavy hitters. So let me do some editing real quick.
Douglas Adams, C.L. Lewis.
I would love
Douglas
to.
Adams is good.
Yeah.
I mean, C.L. Lewis is good too.
Because I mean, this legendary Christian writer, which is like his work is trying to imitate that would probably make my head explode. So this is really fun moment in the story. So once I'm gonna get tongue twisted during this, so just prepare yourself. Okay. Once I manage to not get hit running across Bagley, I make my way over to the middle of the park where there's a perfect opening for me to find Sirius. Where are you, Sirius? I whisper to myself. I pull out my phone and open the Space Tracker app and walk around hoping it'll point right to him. I lift the phone thinking that'll change something when suddenly I see a twinkle appear behind my phone. I lower the screen and there he is, shining in all his glory. I jot down some notes on the coordinates of the star from the app. Then I quickly lift my camera toward the sky and check the settings to make sure everything is just right to get a good shot. Shooting at night has never been my strong suit, but I wasn't going to screw this up. I wasn't going to screw up this shot. I'd never forgive myself. I look through the viewfinder, position the shot just right, and before I can click the shutter release, a blinding light flashes through the viewfinder. Shit, what was that? I rub my eyes and try to stay balanced. I look around to see if a searchlight or a car or something caused it. Nothing. I look back toward where I positioned the shot, and to my bewilderment, Sirius is gone. What the hell? I rub my eyes again and look around to see if maybe someone was pranking me. Anything to explain this. Also, there are no clouds in the sky, and stars don't just disappear in seconds. I know I'm a little loony, but I don't actually know what this is. I glance over at my apartment and there's another mystery. The lights are on, bright as day, shining right through my window. I thought I turned the light off. What the hell is going on? I run back to the apartment. This time I'm more careful when crossing Bagley. I trip on air, typical, and suddenly all the loose papers from my notebook fall. I watch them drift over the front steps of my apartment building. I bend down and try to salvage what's left of my dignity when I see a hand reach for the same sheet as mine. I look up and it's the guy I almost knocked over earlier. He's dressed in a leather jacket with torn jeans and black boots. His hair is what really catches my attention. It's like super long. It's like if Billy Rafool had an American cousin named Jasper. That's a music reference. I don't know what made me come up with that name. Just sounded like it fit. Anywho, I look up and there he is staring at me. You know, I shouldn't be helping you. All I muster up is, huh? You just ran into me, he says. He ran into him before this happened. I'm dead frozen at that point. I have no idea what to say. All I do is nervously twiddle my thumbs. It's okay, dude. I was just, before he could finish, I just word vomit. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm gonna go. Sorry. I jump up and rush toward the door. Hey, you left one, he yells from the stairs. But by that point, I'm already in the building and way too embarrassed to turn around. I hop on the elevator, hoping no one would get on, especially not Loverboy outside. A strong light leaks through the corners of the door. I pause. That's definitely not my lamp. I pull the door open and a blinding light source blares from the living room with the power of a million suns. Oh my God, I yell as I leap back and slam the door shut. My eyes are wide like a deer in headlights, and I'm breathing heavier than I ever have in my entire life. I don't know what to say, what to think. Do I ask for help? What even is it? Is it the thing? It's definitely not a person, or is it? Why am I just standing here? My mind is racing at light speed. Maybe it's just a light from outside shining in, but that bright and focused? Ugh, I'm not Mark Wahlberg or some action star. I don't just run into the thick of drama. I close my eyes and think, maybe it's just a dream, or I don't know. I open my eyes and walk slowly toward the door. I open it slowly and the light is still there. It's closer now. Just as I'm about to slam the door again, a strange sound echoes from the apartment. It sounds almost like a squeaking voice. I'm really losing it, aren't I? I reluctantly walk in slowly. The door closes behind me, and I jump like a frightened puppy. My mouth is open, gasping for air, grasping for answers. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Yay. Thank you.
Suspense.
We love good.
That's interesting. I'm intrigued. I also want to know where it could go if you added 50,000 more words. But I'm going to have to read it in fullness to understand it first to see what happens.
I definitely think the story could, I don't know. I think maybe the next life of it, I feel like I want the next life to either be film or stage. I will want to sort of expand on it in sort of that, because I feel like there's a lot more I can.
Would it be like a single thing, like a movie, or would it be something like an episode? Could it potentially be like a series, like a film, like a show?
I never thought about it that way. I feel like I would rather it be a movie. Yeah, but I mean, I'm open to, maybe if it was a series, maybe a limited series. Yeah.
Like a Stranger Thing kind of thing. But let's not do the third season and wait to see how the first season does. Wait, I shouldn't say that. Nothing against the Stranger Things third season.
It's, I wouldn't know. I'm one of those weird people that still haven't watched it.
Any of it?
Any of it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Season one. Are you into horror movies at all?
I am, and I hate that I am, because they're hard for me to stomach, but I love them.
Do you like 80s horror films? You probably already know, like, basically what it's about and stuff. Maybe not.
I'm not even gonna lie. No, I get the aesthetic. It's funny that you bring up Stranger Things. One of my favorite artists, one of his tour T-shirts is like based off of Stranger Things.
I noticed that. No, the first season, very, very good. Second season, like, I'm not gonna comment on any other season than the first season. That's the only one I want to talk about. Like,
no,
but very, it's a good show as far as like, and you want to talk about young adult literature and stuff like that. But anywho, maybe you're Maybe your book could expand to be like Stranger Things. I don't know.
Maybe.
I'm just saying things.
Honestly, you're giving me a lot of great free ideas. We'll see. We'll definitely see. I'm supposed to be taking a television writing class. I don't know if it's my first or second semester of grad school. So
Well, if you do, let me know. Because that is one thing that I started to write too. It's like a little side project. I came up with this really weird, kind of quirky comedy. I actually wanted to talk to you about it too.
ah, let me
Not
so
gonna, I'm not
before we give away any great ideas, thanks everybody for
gonna, yeah.
watching. Love you all.